The public safety meeting will come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderwoman Howard.
She's excused.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Muhammad. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Chairman Vaccaro.
Present. And as I explained to everybody before, technically, there was a mix-up across the way there. This meeting was actually scheduled for Thursday. Somehow, it went on the calendar letter to the alderman as Tuesday, on the website as Thursday, then they put them both together. So the plan is we're going to have a meeting today because people are here, and I'm also going to have one Thursday. The sponsor of the bill, if you ask him, well, I mean, I think she's pretty much said she's not coming and not going to hear it on either day. But there is a co-sponsor, and if the co-sponsor chooses to come, then we will hear it. The bigger part is if we can get a quorum on Thursday. It's kind of a tough week for quorums. So what we'll do is, I don't even know, do you want to, I guess we'll take a motion to do the minutes from, no, we can't, you're right. You know what? So we're going to have a sign-up sheet, and just come on up, and if you can talk, we'll listen, take some sort of notes, kind of combine that with whatever we hear on Thursday. If we have a quorum Thursday, then potentially we will take a vote. If we can adjust the bill in a way that makes sense. Like you were saying, there's one part you feel is not legal. So I would just say just come up, however, we don't really need any giant order. She'll have a sign-up sheet, and if you can kind of let us know your concerns on the bill, that would be cool. Don't be shy. And thank you. And just let us know who you are, and that would be cool. Just a name. It's just for the minutes. Oh, don't worry about pro or con. It's just for the minutes so that they can put your name in the minutes that you were here. I'm not too worried about pro or con. And again, because of Election Day, and then Thursday is packed full of meetings, that's what's making it so hard. But I did want to make sure, because it's posted two different ways, we're here. And so if you just want to, in whatever order you want, just come on up. I don't know. So whoever wants to start, come on up. The only reason you put your name on there is just so we know who, for the minutes. Tom, you want to be first? There's no time to be shy. Just, Tom, we know who you are.
You know who I am?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Oldenburg. I'm the representative of the 16th Ward, the city of St. Louis. So I have a resident here. A few more wanted to be here, but as you articulated earlier, there was a bit of a scheduling snafu. I think some folks from the 16th Ward are encouraged with the pieces of legislation that exist and are still unpacking and want to understand the healthy balance between folks wanting to maximize wealth and income with their properties, but also what does it do to the quality of life of their neighbors. I think it's really Board Bill 221, the companion bill to this, that I think I might have some comments or some additional discussion around.
That was not in this committee.
I understand.
Did it come out of the
It's
other?
going to HUD's. So I'm just speaking to let everyone know that, because it has to go to the Planning Commission for recommendations.
Do you know if it's come out of HUD's or not?
It has not yet, no.
Okay.
It hasn't even, I don't even think it's been taken up by the Planning Commission because it involves zoning changes. So that's really, I think, where, in a separate committee, in a separate hearing, but albeit it's tied to the board that's in front of you all, 222, is where probably the substance of a lot of maybe my comments and some of our other colleagues are going to have, just around conditional use, maybe some further protections for residents, particularly in low-density, single-family areas.
Right.
I think a large majority of this is a pretty good first start. I also like the concept of the task force that exists, where that can be an additional board that's representative of policymakers as well as residents and business owners, as well as those who share in the platform, to be able to continue to tinker with and create what will be meaningful policy around this issue that a lot of municipalities are grappling with. So more to really come from I think, myself and maybe some other of our colleagues on that separate piece. I think what's in front of you today really just sets up the process. Everyone's going to be required a permit. Here's the construct of how we'll work from an organizational perspective, and how the building commissioner's office will be dealing with it. So I just wanted to really bring this committee apprised that a majority of I think my comments and issues and discussions around this bill will be in the separate one, but worth you all knowing.
Sure, and I appreciate that, because I'm certainly not aware, I don't sit on that committee, and I'm not
Yeah,
aware of.
so, and I do, and I sit on the HUD's committee, so I'll be happy to keep you apprised, Mr. Chairman, by all means, so.
So, I'll ask, and I'm sure if Jeffrey, but, so, do we need to pass this one first, or does the other one first?
Well,
or-
I'm
or
uncomfortable
they-
answering that. I mean, the sponsors, I think, really should be the ones. I don't think from a sequence perspective, I think this bill would not need to pass first, but just through logistics would pass first, simply because the other one requires the planning commission to dig in, make recommendations, and then it would head on to HUD. So I'm not sure that either way, the timing, if one passes in front of the other, means anything substantial. They do both have to pass in order for them both to become law, or of a local city ordinance. So I can't really speak to if it has to pass first or not. I don't think so.
No, I appreciate that.
You
'cause
bet,
I'm-
bud.
Alderman Moore, no questions for me. So if you want to
Answer 'em
hear,
anyway.
You want me to make up something?
No. Thank you. I appreciate your time. I wish you had the rest of your cohorts here, but understanding.
It's going to be difficult even Thursday, because Thursday, which you sit on personnel like I do
Correct.
and
That's
Jeffrey.
going to be a long day, too.
Wednesday and Thursday, for hiring, they're going to have meetings that are going to be 8 hours. I'm going to see if I can pull people enough over to get a
Sure.
quorum and to make it a possible vote. But I also don't want to vote something that's just going to end up in court next week.
Yeah, no, it's-
So,
That's within your purview, Mr. Chairman, by all means. I'm going to step away now and let these
Great,
residents who have
yes.
taken time out of their day to be able to speak to you all.
and
Thank you.
thank you all for coming in for my mixed-up meeting schedule. You're fine. You may have to pull that down, so.
So my name is Karen Carabell, and I started as an owner-operator back in 2007 with a carriage house in my backyard. The city licensed it as a bed and breakfast because nobody knew in 2007 what vacation rentals were in cities. They weren't a thing yet in cities. I'm now an investor owner in the city of St. Louis. My sister and I own a company that has 21 vacation rentals in some of the city's best neighborhoods, neighborhoods that people want to come to and play in. And our city knocks people's socks off, especially when they see it from the vantage point of our apartments, which are all in historic buildings. I applaud the city for this legislation for two reasons. I like that it's simple, and I also like that you've created a task force, as Alderman Oldenburg stated, because I've been in this industry 13 years now, and we go to the professional conferences to learn best practices, do everything we can to be the best we can be, and this industry is still, 13 years later, the Wild West. It's changing as I speak. So very smart to have the task force to advise the building commissioner. I support the legislation with one exception. It is unfair to have a two-tier permit fee, It is unfair to charge owner occupants $100 and charge investor owners double the same price, the price, $200, for the same piece of paper. It's not only unfair, it's probably unconstitutional, and it also violates the spirit of the ordinance. On the first page, in line 14, it says, to provide, I don't have it in front of me, but providing equal opportunity.
Yeah.
And the two-tier permit fee is not equal opportunity. One permit fee for all players is a fair permit fee. If the city decides to keep that two-tier permit fee, we deserve to know why. If it's because there's this feeling that investor owners make more money than owner-operators, in my experience, that's simply not true. I made a lot more money as an owner-operator when I did all the work myself, and I obviously can't do all the work myself with 21 vacation rentals, but we've increased our staff by over 30%, and these are people who earn well over the minimum wage, full-time jobs, and we pay everything, workman's comp, they get vacation pay, 401k, health insurance. I mean, these are good jobs. Right. So I'm not playing a violin that's very big, but we need to know why, if you keep the two-tier permit fee, the reasoning for that. So thank you for your time.
Oh, no, and maybe, I'm going to send our comments to the sponsors and ask that, if they'd have an issue, they could amend it to the, because if we get something that everybody feels is something we should pass and could pass, that isn't going to end up in a lawsuit and all that. So whatever we hear today, I will send to the sponsors.
Okay.
And ask them to adjust it and see if they're willing.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what do you have a concern potentially in the future, let's look 10, 15 years from now, about the overproliferation of vacation rentals in a neighborhood and what it might do to the neighborhood 15 years from now?
In I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how to answer
Just
your
your
question.
first thoughts.
My belief is that in the city of St. Louis, we have plenty of room. A city that held 800,000 people in the 50s and only 300,000 now, I think there's, I don't believe that'll be an issue in 15 years, but I don't have a crystal ball.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. It doesn't matter, don't be shy. Come on up.
Alderman order.
You just call.
Okay, we'll call, okay. Call you, go ahead, you can call.
Emanuela.
You coming up? Oh, yeah, just come on up to the. Oh, well, no, because they get to hear you for the TV thing.
Being recorded.
You'll be all right. It's not that scary. Hey, Emanuela.
Who I am and where I live.
Yeah, that's all.
My name is Emanuela Larson. I'm a student at School of Social Work. I'm doing an internship at practicum at United Way. This was part of my learning agreement. I thought it'd be easy to do this, so my other options was go to Jeff City and do a rally and all that. I don't think I can make it there, so I found this meeting yesterday because my teacher, I was not aware that I had a time to do it. I thought I had the rest of the semester where I could take my time, but yesterday she asked my supervisor if I have done it. And my supervisor, what is she talking about? I said, oh, I signed up to go to this thing. She said, well, you better go soon. So here I am now.
So Emanuela, so are you here to speak for vacation home by rental or for your class?
I'm just here to listen.
Just here to listen, okay.
I have no idea what's going on. I chose this because I wanted to see how the government works on a local base.
Okay, and if you're here Thursday, you might get a better feeling for that.
Not going to be able to make it Thursday.
Oh, okay. Alderman Boyd has.
Well, it's a good record to show that you were here.
Yes.
So there'll be no dispute that you made it, just to observe. But thanks for being here.
Hopefully, this can give me experience to want to come more often when
Yes.
when I free up school, when I graduate in May, I can come in here and listen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, God bless, thank you.
Amal Taylor.
So, good morning.
Good morning.
So as I state
Thank
my
you
name.
for voting.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So my name is Amal Taylor. I am a current MD and PhD student at WashU's Brown School of Social Work and Public Health. And I am here as a part of a graduate policy scholars program. I'm interested in learning more about how government works on a state level also at a local level. And I was interested in hearing or observing the hearing today. I read the bill, and since I'm here,
Sure,
I
please.
do have somewhat of an opinion I'd like to share. I have been involved in vacation rentals, helping my cousin, who rents out a home in Rochester, Minnesota. He started his business. He's been in the business about a year. And through being involved in that business, I've definitely seen how beneficial it could be on a personal business level, and it provides homeowners with a additional method of economic opportunity, and just thinking about some of the possible oppositions to bills, such as bringing great change to neighborhoods in the long term, what I would say to that is the market dynamics would kind of limit the effects of that. For example, if a market becomes too saturated with these vacation rental homes, there would not be as much business available for additional people to enter that business, and that oversaturation would result in lack of success in some of the businesses, and that would dissuade further owners. So there will be a tipping point where those further growth would become untenable, and I believe that in St. Louis, as one of my other constituents said earlier, there is tons of room for growth. Thank you for your time.
Okay, well, God bless you, thank you. And thank you for your thoughts.
Diana.
Hi, good morning. My name's Diana Bentz. I'm a resident of the 16th Ward.
Sure.
And I echo what Tom Oldenburg said. I understand that today is not the bill that I'm more interested in. However, since I'm here, I will say some things for record. I think it is important, as Tom mentioned, to find that balance between vacation rentals, Airbnbs and such, and also the rights of residents. And for me personally, living in a residential neighborhood, my biggest concern is the integrity of the neighborhood by putting businesses next door. And I understand some people do not see this as a business. However, even in the example used earlier with having to hire people to help, it does become or take on the nature of a business. And I would like to see a balance between people being able to use their property in ways that they can benefit from financially, but also balance that with the needs of their neighbors, especially in residential areas. And in terms of your question, Mr. Boyd, that you had asked, I don't have a crystal ball either, but I have done research and I have seen in other cities where it has grown and expanded, and it does impact the integrity of a residential neighborhood. And in fact, in some places, it's not stopped with vacation rentals, There are things like restaurants being operated out of people's homes and those types of things. And so, you know, I just ask for fairness across the board and trying to strike a good balance. I'm not against vacation rentals. I'm not against people being able to, you know, gain financially, but I would like to, especially with the residential neighborhoods, have you consider and request that you consider a better balance, because right now I don't feel that there is one.
So is there, and I agree with you only because I get the calls too, and I tried doing something 3 years ago and the neighborhood didn't like it because they're like, well, you're just making them legal.
Yeah.
But I strongly feel if you license them, at least you can eliminate the bad ones by taking their license away.
And I think what you did, I think Alderman Vaccaro 3 years ago was the start. And I think I think where we're headed is the right direction. And I don't disagree with licensing. I still do feel that it does make them legal, and then the neighbors, the surrounding neighbors then don't have any recourse. But I do think that it is important to have some sort of structure, such as the licensing. And I've been involved in the town hall meetings, and it sounds like owners also feel the same way, as we heard.
I think that's
Yeah.
what we kind of came up with.
Yeah.
But then the argument, and why I kind of backed off a little bit, was I couldn't find a balance. Usually you can work through something, find a balance. And, you know, even on this, I asked the sponsors, just make sure whatever we do, because we can do whatever we want. We can say, you just can't do it. And then the realtors have a lot of money, and then it'll go to court. It'll be there for the next 2 or 3 years. And they've done this, from what I remember in all my research, Maplewood has done some regulations, and it sort of worked.
Yeah.
But anybody that's tried to ban these, even in New York City and places that you would think, you know, they got a lot of money to fight this stuff,
Yeah.
they've lost every time against this, you know, against them. So, you know, I'm even back then, I'm for, how do we stop it? I mean, people are there on vacation, the house in my neighborhood has a swimming pool, they're up drinking, having their parties at 1 or 2 in the morning while people are trying to go to work. It seems like that one's calmed down. We came to an agreement with them, but still, so I've always felt the licensing, and I find the bill interesting. I just want to make sure whatever we do isn't just going to, I mean, the realtors have already hired a fairly high-priced attorney over there in Dave, you know.
He's not highly, he's highly priced.
I know he's expecting lots of, you know, but I'm just saying, they, you know, and so I'm just trying to make sure whatever we're doing,
Yeah.
because I told them they could put my name if they hadn't already as a co-sponsor, and if they would have, I could have heard the thing, and we could have just kept going forward. I've told them to put my name on there as a co-sponsor. I want to see change, and I wasn't aware of the bill that Tom's talking about, and it sounds like that might deal more with the neighborhood part.
Right.
Is there issues in 222 that you would have if we pass it out?
I wouldn't, I mean,
Or would you prefer it's either this week or otherwise it goes, oh, okay. The Vice Chairman has explained, we can't really talk about 222.
Yeah.
But we can if you wait a few minutes, and you can just tell me your thoughts. Because without the sponsors here,
right.
it's not in front of us.
Right, I
This is-
understand. And in terms of this bill that we're here to talk about today, do I have any real issues with it? You know, I have concerns because in my mind, 222 and 221 are connected together. And without a resolution on 221, it's hard for me to comment, you know? But I certainly want what's fair for both sides. I'm not asking for a ban per se, but I am asking for consideration of residential, strictly residential neighborhoods and doing something to protect the integrity of those neighborhoods.
Which I am like 100% with you on that.
Yeah.
Because, again, I mean, that people are in my neighborhood, because, you know, some of these have been rented out as a party house.
Right.
because people don't want their kids having their graduation party, so they, you know.
Right.
And that's why, just in my mind, why I really felt like licensing, because if you have one and you take their license away, then they can't do business.
Right.
And this way, you're not punishing the people that you don't even really know. Because one of the folks that called me said, you know, I do this, but I'm closer to the, you know, if we're looking at the whole city, I'm closer to the university and I'm closer to the hospitals. And so I have students and nurses that come in and they're there for 2 and 3 months at a time. We got, in your ward and our ward, we got the same problem, that people are renting these and they're, you know, it gets out there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but, and if you could after, I know we can't, but we can after. I'd like to know what you think. Do we need to continue to work on this or not?
Okay.
And I'm sorry, don't,
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Boyd, did you? Oh, no, okay.
Okay, well, and I appreciate, there's nothing else that I have to say. Like I mentioned, you know, what Tom Oldenburg had said, I agree with him, finding the balance, focusing on this when we talk about the other board bill. But I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Okay, well, come and thank you for coming, and I'm sorry, everybody, for all the mix-up in the schedules and all that. It's just worked that way.
Marvin.
They might have. Were you here last time? Jeffrey thinks you look familiar.
Good morning. My name is Marvin Notiff. I live in Skinker to Bolivar. I have lived there in a single-family house since 1979. So I've seen the neighborhood go through a lot of transition. About 2.5 years ago, Skinker to Bolivar Community Council designated a committee to look at housing issues. This was not the only issue, but it did come up. I've been looking at data for the last 2.5 years in connection with the committee, actually before then, and we've seen such a tremendous growth in short-term rentals across the country, and it's accelerated in the last 3 years in terms of the data. Now we have a lot of activity that researchers and universities and NGO organizations can look at and study and make some recommendations. The National League of Cities has looked at, it done several studies on the shared economy, including short-term rentals. So my contribution to your work on this bill is to say, look, I've looked at what the data provides, what independent research studies have told us is going on, and things that we should be aware of. And like the National League of Cities says, tailor a bill to fit our particular neighborhoods, our particular characteristics, and our needs. So I'm an attorney. I retired a few years ago after more than 30 years representing community associations. The lessons that I got, my takeaway from that was that really I was in the trenches dealing with neighborhoods, communities, and I can tell you my observations about what makes good communities, what creates harmony, what creates value, what creates a sense of community, and things that diminish those things. Alderman Boyd asked a question about what impact does this have on neighborhoods. Let me tell you, I will give you a couple of pages that summarizes the research that I've done.
I would appreciate it.
So far, I've got like 25 to 30 pages worth of cases that have come out just in the last 3 years, judicial opinions. But mostly it's research that universities have done and people who gather urban sociological data. Now, I'm going to just focus this morning on 3 things. Public health and safety, in my mind, is the most important thing. Airbnb, I use that generically, including VRBO and all the other platforms. Their business model is self-regulation. So we don't have any public criteria that they need to meet. But they act like hotels. I mean, that's what they are. People stay there for a few nights. So it's purely transient. Some of the studies show that, like in Los Angeles, Airbnb, an operator, can generate more revenue in 83 nights of short-term rentals than the typical one-year annual lease for a long-term tenant, 83 nights. Other studies show that 2/3 of short-term rental operators are investor owners. You heard earlier from one host with 21 sites. Now, I visited Airbnb's website last summer and saw in one apartment building on Kings Highway, there were 12 units by the same owner. That's going to create a ghost hotel. That's what one study of New York City described with this problem with apartments. It's a big business now. It's a big business, but it's not, there aren't any minimum requirements for health and safety. Fire extinguishers, exit doors, instructions on safety for the residents, like we do in hotels. The business model is totally self-regulation. And to distinguish between a homeowner who invites people to come in, say, I got a spare room, I could use the revenue, there's a lot of other motivations besides profit that person has. And the studies indicate it's social interaction. It's primarily seniors who look for the companionship and the excitement, the interaction. It's not just profit. But for investor owners, profit is the motivation. Profit is the motivation. And they don't have any public requirements, but they're inviting people in with kitchen facilities to offer, pots, pans, dishes, kitchen utensils. Those have to be sanitized. What about the bedding? We're talking about hotel use with transient people coming in. The bedding should be fresh, the towels should be clean. There are no requirements that the city has. The last thing we need is to have a problem in one of these short-term rentals that the city has failed to oversee because they act like hotels. That's my first point. The second point is the impact on housing. Short-term rentals don't add new housing units. They point out they're bringing travelers in. This is their contention. They're bringing travelers in who otherwise wouldn't stay in a hotel. They wouldn't come to St. Louis. But for the Airbnb. But they're converting the existing housing. They're not adding housing for these travelers. They're converting single-family homes. They're converting condominium units and apartment units. What is the impact on housing? What is the impact on our neighborhoods? So I mentioned that there's a range of independent studies that are out there, but you don't have to look very far to see that housing prices in Missouri last year over the previous year increased 5.7%. Over the last 5 years, they've increased 31%. That's the price of housing. So here we come along with an idea that's going to convert more existing housing when we're falling behind in supply. And the price, when you reduce supply, of course, the price goes up. And you look at rental rates, there was a study by the Equal Housing Opportunity Council that showed in the Central Corridor, the rental rates are way higher than the metropolitan area at large, 10.8% increase in rental rates in the Central Corridor. That's downtown. So the city needs to get a good handle. We need to take a snapshot, an accurate snapshot of what is the impact today. I've asked around at City Hall, asked my alderman to see if she could find out, does anyone have an idea how many short-term rental conversions have occurred, are occurring right now in St. Louis? We don't know, because the city hasn't gotten that data together. And it's important to break it down. Identify how much is single family, how much is condominium units, how much is apartment units.
I think
Because
they-
we've got a bad enough,
I was gonna
let me
say,
just- let me just finish up,
I think they may
okay?
have figured that out, because they're taxing them at a much higher rate than they, like even a house, they're taxing at a way higher rate.
the assessor's office looked at that. So the assessor's office may have some data because they recognize what I'm saying to you, that this is a business. This is a commercial enterprise.
Sure.
It's not a single-family home that happens to have a few guests in for the weekend. My own neighborhood, we had one 2 doors down for a year and a half. And the neighbors were so upset with this and so frustrated that there was virtually nothing they could do, that the owner, we got so frustrated and leaned on the owner finally sold the place, and now we have a neighbor. And that's what happens. In answer to your question, Alderman Boyd, I think it's going to have devastating effects. It's like putting a hotel in the middle of a neighborhood, the middle of a residential street. I can tell you from personal experience, in terms of observing this house 2 doors down from us, we had 25 people come in 5 different cars for one weekend, just as an example. So it's like dropping a hotel in the middle of the street. That's the effect on and the most important thing to consider is we lose our most important asset when this happens. When a house is converted to short-term rental, we lose a neighbor. We lose a homeowner occupying the house who has a stake in the outcome of that community, a stake in the outcome of St. Louis. That's social capital. That's what we call social capital. We lose that when we have an investor owner. So what these studies show to me, and takeaway in my second point about housing, is we need to be very careful and informed about where we allow this economic energy to be focused. If there's a benefit to tourism and to the city, economic energy, let's focus it where it does the most good and not allow it where it can do the most harm. And then the last thing I want to say, the third point, is the city needs to have a good registration system, and we need to have annual reporting. We need to be able to monitor the impact on housing, on price and supply, and on, and broken down by single-family condos and apartment units, and be able to identify the neighborhoods where that is impacting the most. Some, it's a good fit. Some neighborhoods, it's a good fit. Other neighborhoods, I think Tom Oldenburg suggested this as well in his ward, in the 16th, some areas it's not a good fit. It's not a good fit in single-family zones. I've heard about this companion bill, haven't seen it. It's not adhering here.
Right.
We don't even have a quorum, so I don't know how good this hearing
Well,
is.
what it does, first off, it's a courtesy to the people that showed up. Secondly, I have to make a decision as well as vice chairman. We have to make a decision whether we're passing this legislation out or we're passing this legislation out with changes. So we're listening to what you have to say, and it's pretty much what I already know and what I feel and what my neighbors feel. The question is this the bill that does, there's no way we can ban them, and I believe this bill at least is going the right direction. I don't know that rushing this thing through makes a difference. But let me do this only because I kind of was going to wrap this up at 11. But because of the late start, I'm not pushing that. But if you get a chance, feel free to talk to me after. I'm going to go to the HUD's meeting And I probably need to find out a little bit more because I'm busy on this end of town and they're doing their thing over there. And I think I'm gonna sit down and get a little bit more education from Alderman Oldenburg, since he's more up to speed on the other part of this. And if you get a chance and you wanna leave me your notes, the pages that you're talking about you have, I would be more than happy to actually put them in the record on Thursday.
Thank you.
Okay, well, God bless, thank you. And Councilman Sweeney, Dave, do you have any comments you want to come up and add or subtract or multiply? Do that. Okay, well, I think we've heard from everybody. I'd like to visit after for a minute, and then, so anyway, we'll just adjourn the meeting then, but thank you all for, oh, wait a minute. Yes? Jeez. You have to come up to this thing, because they can't, they like, they wanna
People
see
wait
it on TV.
hours to vote, and then sometimes they don't vote. And I had a friend of mine this morning said in Delwood, the machine was broke, she couldn't vote. I just want to know, what has this body done in city of St. Louis to improve the voting?
Well, that's not a question for this committee,
Oops.
so.
Well, I just want to know, is it an interest of the city to have a lot of people vote like they should? Or what department deals with that?
Yeah, so elections would be, we don't have a committee that specifically deal with elections. Each alderman, try to get the vote out in their particular ward, but there's no committee that focuses on that.
We have his stuff for the record. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you.
That's why it's important to be engaged in your community so that you can help. It's everybody's responsibility to help get the vote out.
Okay, thank you. And so we're going to adjourn, and then I'm going to come out, and we could just all visit.
Did you want to,
If you could hang on.
okay, I'll put it in. Did you want the committee to get a copy of this?
Too much, I'm sorry.
You want the committee to get a copy of this?
For Thursday.
Okay.